George Washington. As the inaugural President of the United States, George Washington was a trailblazer, setting standards and customs that would define the presidency for centuries to come. His reluctance to grasp power too tightly and his decision to step down after 2 terms established a tradition of peaceful transitions of power. Washington's presidency was a balancing act, where he had to knit together a new nation, establish credibility abroad, and navigate uncharted constitutional territory. He implemented policies that would strengthen the federal government, such as the creation of a national bank. His foreign policy was one of neutrality, keeping the fledgling nation out of the European conflicts. Washington's enduring legacy is one of selfless leadership, setting a high moral benchmark for those who followed. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd president and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, was a man of enlightenment, embodying the contradictions and aspirations of a new America. His eloquent writings articulated a vision of liberty and human rights that would inspire generations. As president, Jefferson doubled the size of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, a bold move that offered vast new territories to the young nation and demonstrated his belief in American expansion. Yet his vision of an agrarian, decentralized America often clashed with the realities of a country on the brink of industrial change. Jefferson's advocacy for a limited federal government and his support for states' rights would influence American politics long after his presidency. His achievements are monumental, but so are the debates surrounding his views on slavery and his own slave ownership, which contrast starkly with his professed ideals of human freedom.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president, is often revered as one of America's greatest leaders, guiding the nation through the moral and constitutional crisis of the Civil War. His unwavering commitment to preserve the Union and his eloquence in articulating the nation's principles turned a war to halt secession into a moral crusade against slavery. With the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, Lincoln paved the way for the abolition of slavery, an act that would fundamentally transform the social fabric of the United States. His dedication to the principle that the nation was founded upon the belief that all men are created equal reshaped the American ideal. Lincoln's leadership style, characterized by empathy and humility, his ability to communicate complex issues with clarity and moral force, and his ultimate sacrifice, assassinated as the Civil War drew to a close, left an indelible mark on the American consciousness. Theodore Roosevelt. The 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, was a dynamo of energy and reform, embodying the vigor of the American spirit at the turn of the 20th century. Known affectionately as Teddy, he was a progressive who believed in the power of government to balance the interests of various social groups. His square deal policies aimed to protect the common man against big business and to ensure fairness for all. Roosevelt was also a staunch conservationist, setting aside vast tracts of natural land for national parks and forests, preserving America's natural beauty for future generations. His foreign policy was assertive, exemplified by the saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," which led to the construction of the Panama Canal and a more assertive American presence on the world stage. Roosevelt's larger-than-life persona, commitment to tackling the big issues of the day, and his vision of America as an active and ethical participant in global affairs still resonate today. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR, the 32nd president, took the helm of a nation in the depths of the Great Depression. With his New Deal, Roosevelt reimagined the role of the federal government as an active agent of change, providing social safety nets and infrastructure projects to revive the economy and the American spirit. His fireside chats brought a sense of reassurance to a struggling populace, making innovative use of the radio to communicate directly with citizens. FDR's leadership during World War II was instrumental in the Allied victory, with his ability to inspire confidence and mobilize the nation's vast resources. He was the architect of the post-war world order, laying the groundwork for institutions like the United Nations. Roosevelt's unprecedented 4 terms in office altered the American political landscape, cementing the expectation that the government has a responsibility to promote the welfare of its people and to play a leading role on the world stage. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, the 28th president, was an academic turned politician whose vision for America had both domestic and international implications. His presidency was marked by significant progressive reforms, including the establishment of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Trade Commission, aimed at regulating the economy and preventing corporate abuses. Wilson, a former university president, believed in the power of education and the importance of moral leadership. During World War I, he initially kept the United States neutral, but eventually led the nation into the conflict with the aim to make the world safe for democracy. Following the war, he championed the League of Nations, an international organization intended to prevent future conflicts. Although the U.S. Senate did not ratify the treaty for America to join the League, Wilson's idealistic vision laid the groundwork for today's global diplomatic efforts and earned him the 1919 Nobel Peace Prize. Harry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president, assumed office during the waning months of World War II after the death of Franklin D. Roosevelt. He made one of the most consequential decisions in history by authorizing the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki with the aim of bringing the war to a swift end. This controversial decision forever altered the landscape of warfare and international relations. Truman's presidency was also defined by the Marshall Plan, which helped to rebuild Europe's economy and stave off the spread of communism, establishing a precedent for American involvement in global economic affairs. Domestically, his Fair Deal policy sought to continue Roosevelt's legacy by promoting social welfare and civil rights, despite facing substantial political opposition. Truman's plain-speaking demeanor and decisive action during pivotal moments, such as the Korean War and the beginning of the Cold War, positioned him as a steadfast leader in a rapidly changing post-war world. Dwight D Eisenhower. Dwight D Eisenhower, the 34th president, was a 5-star general turned statesman whose leadership was characterized by a mix of caution and action. He brought a sense of calm and stability to a nation anxious about the Cold War and the nuclear age. Eisenhower's foreign policy was known as the New Look, which prioritized nuclear deterrence and covert intelligence operations over conventional forces, a strategy designed to contain communism while managing defense costs. Domestically, he is remembered for launching the Interstate Highway System, which revolutionized American transportation and commerce, and for enforcing the desegregation of schools following the Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education. Eisenhower's presidency was marked by a moderate and pragmatic approach, seeking to balance military strength with diplomatic efforts, such as the Atoms for Peace program, which sought to transform the nuclear military complex into a force for peaceful nuclear energy development. John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, The 35th president embodied a new era of youthful optimism and charisma. Known for his inspiring oratory, he urged Americans to ask not what their country could do for them, but what they could do for their country. His presidency, though tragically cut short, was marked by significant events such as the Cuban Missile Crisis, where his leadership through a blockade and careful diplomacy averted a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. Kennedy's vision for America was progressive, championing civil rights, space exploration with the goal of landing a man on the moon, and the establishment of the Peace Corps to promote international friendship and development. His push for civil rights legislation laid the groundwork for future advancements in social justice. Kennedy's ability to connect with people, his forward-looking vision, and his call to service continue to inspire long after his assassination in 1963, securing his place in the collective memory as a symbol of American idealism. Lyndon B Johnson. Lyndon B Johnson, often referred to as LBJ, became the 36th president following the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He is renowned for his ambitious domestic agenda known as the Great Society, which aimed to eliminate poverty and racial injustice. Johnson's tenure saw the passage of groundbreaking legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited racial discrimination, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which removed barriers preventing African Americans from voting. His war on poverty introduced measures like Medicaid and Medicare, fundamentally transforming social welfare in America. Despite these significant achievements, Johnson's presidency was deeply marred by the Vietnam War. His decision to escalate American involvement in Vietnam led to widespread protest and division within the country. The war overshadowed his domestic successes and led to a decision not to seek re-election. Johnson's complex legacy is one of great social progress at home and tumultuous conflict abroad. Ronald Reagan. Reagan played a pivotal role in the latter stages of the Cold War. His aggressive military spending against the Soviet Union put pressure on the Soviet economy and its political leadership. His relationship with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was crucial in easing tensions and ultimately contributed to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Reagan's economic policy focused on tax cuts, deregulation, reduction in government spending on domestic programs, and an increase in military spending. The policy aimed to reduce inflation and stimulate economic growth, but also led to an increase in the national debt. Barack Obama. Barack Obama served as the 44th President of the United States from 2009 to 2017. His election was historic, as he became the first African American to hold the nation's highest office, marking a monumental milestone in a country with a profound and painful history of racial inequality. Obama's presidency represented not just a political shift, but also an expansion of American ideals about who could aspire to and attain leadership. Before his presidency, Obama was known for his work as a community organizer, a civil rights attorney, and a senator from Illinois. His message of hope and change resonated with many Americans who sought a new direction after economic challenges and international conflicts. Once in office, Obama's signature domestic achievement was the Affordable Care Act, ACA, which aimed to reduce healthcare costs and expand healthcare coverage. This legislation faced significant opposition and legal challenges, becoming a defining feature of Obama's tenure. The ACA brought healthcare access to millions, but also sparked a heated debate about the role of government in healthcare. James Madison. James Madison, the fourth U.S. president, is best remembered as the father of the Constitution. He was a key architect of the U.S. Constitution, advocating for a balanced federal government and the inclusion of the Bill of Rights, which protected individual freedoms. Madison's vision ensured a system of checks and balances within the government, a cornerstone of American democracy. He also co-authored the Federalist Papers, influential essays that argued for the Constitution's ratification. His leadership during the War of 1812, although challenging, ultimately affirmed U.S. independence and highlighted the need for a robust federal government. Madison's contributions laid the groundwork for the United States political system and its enduring commitment to civil liberties. 14. James Monroe. James Monroe was the 5th President of the United States, serving from 1817 to 1825. His presidency is often referred to as the era of good feelings, a period marked by a sense of national unity and political harmony following the War of 1812. Monroe's leadership was characterized by significant territorial expansion and a strong stance on American sovereignty. One of Monroe's most enduring legacies is the Monroe Doctrine, a declaration made in 1823 during his 7th State of the Union address. It was a bold foreign policy statement that warned European powers against further colonization and interference in the Americas, asserting that any attempts to do so would be viewed as acts of aggression toward the United States. While initially Monroe's policy had little enforcement power, it became a cornerstone of American foreign policy and a symbol of U.S. commitment to independence throughout the Western Hemisphere. Monroe also oversaw the acquisition of Florida from Spain in 1819, which was a strategic move to secure the nation's borders and prevent European powers from using the territory as a base for hostile actions against the U.S. His presidency contributed to a growing sense of American nationalism and the desire for westward expansion that would define the country's trajectory in the 19th century. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, known as Old Hickory, was the 7th U.S. president, serving from 1829 to 1837. A symbol of the common man, he expanded voting rights and challenged the political elite. However, his presidency is controversial due to the Indian Removal Act, which led to the suffering and displacement of Native Americans in the Trail of Tears. Jackson also dismantled the Second Bank of the United States, viewing it as an elitist institution, which redefined the role of the presidency in economic policy. His actions reflected the tensions of a nation evolving in its ideas of democracy and power.